Now, the African lion is one of the most endangered species in the world. There are as few as 20,000 of them left in the wild. Their numbers have dropped by almost half across the continent in just the last 2 decades. Well, joining me now is Dr. Shivani Bhalla, a Kenyan conservationist who next week will be recognised for her work with an award from the Whitley Fund for Nature. She's here with Jeneria Lekilelei, Director of Community Conservation at Ewaso Lions Project. Thank you both so much for joining me. Now, thank you. If you start with you, Shivani, first of all, what was it that led you to this project?
I've always loved wildlife, Luxmy. I grew up seeing wildlife and going on safari with my parents, and I just developed this huge passion for them. I very quickly realized lions were in huge trouble, and the population in northern Kenya, in Samburu, where we live and work, was unknown. We didn't know what was happening to them. And I learned that they would disappear from protected areas and not come back. Their numbers were plummeting across the continent, across Kenya, and that's what made us start Ewaso Lions, to see what is happening with this population and what can we do to bring back the lion population.
Yeah, and I understand that they're more endangered than elephants and rhinos. That's not something that people might necessarily expect.
No one knows this. They think there's just lots of lions everywhere. But there's only about 20,000 in Africa. They're only living in about 8% of their historical range. If you think about it, between the first Lion King and second Lion King, lion numbers have gone by half. They've dropped by half. So the numbers are really low, and it's a huge concern for not just the whole African continent, but all of us, all of us living in countries where lions are so important and play such a big role.
Yeah, that's a really stark way of looking at it, isn't it? The change in numbers between the two Lion King films there. Well, Jeneria, I'm going to turn to you. How closely is the Lion Conservation Project tied to your culture?
Thank you very much. So, luckily, Ewaso Lion was started through our culture to give our warriors the role to play within lion conservation, the women's the role to play through lion conservation, and that is why our project, Ewaso Lions in northern Kenya, is very much tied into the Samburu culture in northern Kenya.
And something that's very interesting that you've said is that hearing a lion's roar gives you hope. Can you explain that?
Yes. Wildlife in general means so much to our culture. We believe, like such as elephants, they are our ancestors. Lions, when they roar or they come around my village in Samburu, it means that that's a good sign of hope, that there will be no rain, there will be no drought at all, there will be no problem. And that is why lions around my village is very important.
Yeah, and that the lion's roar as a sound and just the image of the lion as a symbol, they're both so poignant, aren't they? And what is the key to helping the lion population against all these challenges of the drought, of the other climate change related issues that are affecting the population?
So our lion population actually reached its highest last year. In the last 15 years, it's slowly been increasing, and then finally last year we hit the 50 mark. And the key to having our lions doing well now is it's the communities who live alongside lions who are the ones making decisions for lions. It's the warriors, it's the elders like Jeneria, it's our Mama Simba women. They're the ones who are actually involved in conserving the lions. They've lived with lions for generations, so it's not like coexistence is something new. The challenge is coexistence is getting harder. It's getting much harder for communities to live alongside lions. But by having the communities themselves decide what is best for their land and wildlife like lions, then that is what's really caused them to increase in numbers and for them to be well protected.
And assuming the communities are on board and they support that, there must though be very real practical challenges that they face though too. How do you reconcile the two?
Definitely. So droughts are such a common occurrence now. We see, we feel, we hear climate change every single day. Our river, the Ewaso River, dries up all the time. It's such a problem for communities. It's such a problem for their cows and camels and lions and other wildlife. So the communities themselves are figuring out what they need to do to really help their land. This is community-led conservation, and to me, that will address all the challenges we have in biodiversity. We're facing a huge biodiversity crisis globally, but community-led conservation, to me, is the only solution to this crisis that we face.
And this project is an example of hope, of where things are going in the right direction. But what are the biggest obstacles that you've faced in this project?
They've changed over time. So when we first started Ewaso Lions, the biggest threat lions faced was young warriors killing lions because their camels and cows were being killed. So understandably, a young Samburu livestock owner would be very upset and would go out and shoot lions. But through Jeneria's program, the Warrior Watch program, they were able to really stop that. And warriors now protect lions instead of killing them. Over time, the threats and challenges increased and changed. Now we're facing threats of droughts and climate change. We're facing the threat of disease, which is something 15 years ago I never would have imagined. We have development coming in and blocking lion corridors and other key areas for all wildlife. So over time, the threats and challenges have faced, but we've remained adaptable, flexible. We've included all the demographics, the men, women, children, elders, to come on board and really protect what is theirs.
Oh, well, thank you so much for coming in to speak to us, Dr. Shivani Bhalla and Jeneria Lekilelei. Thank you so much, both of you, for coming in.